All right. So welcome to this week's webinar. We have one of these, try to have one of these every week, but we alternate. So one week is kind of a topic like this one is more around sustainability. Sometimes we've had ones about how to communicate using video, how to break your policy into pieces. And then other ones are just kind of a straightforward Shep demo. We just do a general overview of all of our capabilities. But this one is sort of obviously ties in some Shep stuff, but it also sort of contains other stuff that you can take away that you can use potentially without us entirely. So like I said, it's every Thursday, typically about 15 minutes. We try to keep that really tight. Want to make these easy, non-committal, so you can just swoop in, spend 15 minutes, learn something, and disappear. And then we also record them and send them to you afterwards, so you can share them with your team. We've been quite impressed where we've had people reach out and say they've watched all of our recorded videos, which has been cool. So it means we're doing something partially right, at least. Yeah, and so as I said, it's sort of demos, previews, topics, how-tos, best practices. And it's the same link every week to register as well. Yeah, so this week is around sustainability. Generally, there are some major problems around adopting sustainability in your travel program. Firstly, that most sustainability solutions are backwards looking, they're retrospective. So you sort of are looking back, saying how much carbon did what was our carbon footprint over some period of time, and then what do we do about that? How do we sort of address that problem after the fact? So the damage is done, you're now trying to offset that. There are pretty major knowledge gaps. You know you should be doing something sustainable. You just don't know necessarily how, which also kind of ties into the actions are more important than intentions. We talk to people all the time who say, yeah, we know we should be doing more. We just don't know how to do it. How do we actually take steps to be more sustainable, to track our carbon impact, how to fix it, how to proactively stop it. So those are kind of the main problems we sort of see in this space. The important thing is it's an ongoing process. It's not just a one-time fix. It's something you've got to adopt as a culture. It's something you've got to sort of push forward within the organization at all levels. And so, here's a quote from Darwin. Obviously, it's the survival of the species. So it's the one that's most adaptable that changes is sort of the whole theory behind Darwinism. And so it is important to be adaptable, to say, okay, we've been doing things this way for so long. We've realized that we've had a moment, especially during COVID, to step back, reprioritize, look at how we're running our program, look at what impact we're having and what we could be doing better, and then adapt the program to do that and continually doing that, keep evaluating, working through. And so now really is the right time to sort of identify where the gaps are and address them, see how you can fix and proactively going forward, how you can fill that gap in your program. It's always been, this is obviously based on a fairly small sample size, but I'd say most of last year, the travel managers we spoke to said sustainability is a nice to have. It's something that they personally care about, but it's not an organizational priority. That seems to have changed a lot within this last quarter and a bit, where sustainability is starting to rise up that priority stack, which has been great to see. And so everyone, as I said, everything's been pretty retrospective. It's like after the fact, what do we do to fix the damage that's been done? But how do you prevent future damage? How do you sort of start to mitigate and limit the amount of impact you're having? So obviously technology, we're big fans of it. So using technology to sort of try and optimize your travel and prevent it. Look at different alternatives to flying, especially in and around Europe, the East Coast, where trains, and there's all sorts of options to travel. Looking at more direct flights. Now, that sometimes is in conflict. If your policy is focused on cost savings and ROI, sometimes that can be in direct conflict, but the long-term costs of trying to then offset the carbon versus paying a bit more for a direct flight can actually even out in some cases. Looking at hotels, actually looking in your RFPs beyond just location and cost and amenities, but actually seeing who is following sustainable practices, and then, going green. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. We always try to do a framework in this to kind of like think through and model out some of the things we're talking about here. So I'm just quickly going to share my screen. So what I'm going to show you today is what we're calling the travel carbon framework. And as we said, as you're traveling, you need to continually be evaluating and evolving and adapting your program. And so the way you do that is through a few things. You need to sort of capture data, and obviously that's what people are booking, what your impact is, what your carbon footprint is. You need to have that data. Once you've got it in hand, you then need to analyze it to see, is this really a problem? Are we really an offender? What sort of analytics do we have around this? And then you need to turn that into something that you can then report back to your team to then prioritize this and bring this to the attention of the right people so they do see that this is something that really does need addressing. You use that reporting then to get buy-in all the way to the top level. You really need everyone's support to be able to change your program and move the organization to be more sustainable. Then you've got your historical data. You then need to be able to offset that historically and sort of buy back to sort of earn back the credits that have been spent. And then finally, and this is where we come in, you need to nudge behavior to change that. And so if you do that, it kind of becomes a cycle. As you're nudging behavior, making sure people are making better choices, educating them what they should do, you then are sort of traveling better, capturing that data, analyzing, and continually improving that program on an ongoing basis. Let me go back to my screen and just show you how Shep works in this way. So I'm going to do a couple examples of flights. So for the uninitiated, we are a browser extension. So Shep lives up here in your browser, is able to see what website you're on. And on specific travel sites, we can pop up messages and guidance. So I'll show you some examples. So for example, if I was saying I'm going to go from London, this is an example. So this is a pop-up showing you, what airlines that you have unused credits on, just to prompt your employees. Obviously not sustainable, but related, but still a good feature. But so I'm saying I'm going to go from London to Paris, not Paris. I'm going to go to Paris. And you'll see here some new messages have popped up. So this is the one I wanted to show you, asking, have you considered high-speed rail? So this journey will emit 30 times more emissions than a high-speed train. So that little nudge is now educating them that this specific route has options that you should be looking at for rail. Another example would be, let's say I was going to Chicago. Here's a prompt that is set up that is saying, hey, unless you've got multiple meetings in Chicago, maybe you should use Zoom. And this actually would allow you to launch Zoom and schedule a meeting right there. You could also add notifications that are focused on your hotel. So as I said, trying to get your hotel properties to sort of focus on sustainability is important. So you can pick your top, let's say 10 cities with your top sustainable options and pop that up. So when they search for specific destination, that pops up. And then the last three I want to show you are things that we've partnered with a company called Thrust Carbon that just came out in a BTN article earlier this week on sustainability. And I wanted to show you what that integration works with, or looks like at least. So if I'm going from Brisbane to San Jose, this data is then coming in from Thrust Carbon. So it does an analysis of that route and is able to say this trip is the equivalent of 38,000 days of video conferencing or traveling 9% to the moon. So you can see how bringing that awareness and making it more tangible can really help drive behavior and educate the team. Another example would be, I'm going to Frankfurt. So very similarly, here is my carbon budget. So we're saying this trip is going to be 45 tons. Oh, sorry, my carbon budget available is 45 tons of CO2. This specific trip itself will take 7 tons of CO2, and you can see what my remaining budget would be. So it really is kind of bringing this to the forefront of the booking experience in the online booking tool. And then finally, if I actually run a search, you can then prompt them if you have a airline or you've purchased some sustainable aviation fuel, you can actually prompt people around that as well. So here's an example saying, hey, we've purchased SAF from Delta, so please make sure you try and fly Delta or Lufthansa, whoever it is that you have sustainable aviation fuel with, to prompt them and remind them what to do. So as you can see, you can pop up these Shep notifications not just on the homepage, but across multiple pages along the search and booking journey. Yeah, so we are running a discount at the moment on the Shep platform. That's about 35% off for anyone who signs up for a pilot or a full implementation before the end of the quarter. And even if you just sign up for a pilot, you lock in the annual discount for 2 years, just because we obviously recognize that travel is down, budgets are tight, but it is important to get your new policies, procedures, and priorities in place in time for the return to travel. So that's kind of why we're trying to be very flexible to be able to work with people on getting Shep in place before travel really ramps up. We have a couple of ebooks, and one is the 5 steps to return to travel. It basically is helping you with your return to travel policy, thinking about how to prioritize different elements and what to adjust in your program. And then another one is more Shep specific, which is how to implement guided buying to sort of push those new policies and approval flows, whatever the case is, forward by bringing all this fragmented data into one place. So as the traveler searches, they get the steps they need to take right in front of them. Interested to know if there's any questions. You can just tap them in the chat if you like, or you feel free to unmute yourself if you like. Yeah, so the way that this gets set up is we work with your IT department to push the extension out to employee computers. And so for the employee experience, it's very seamless. They just show up to work, and when they open their web browser, a new window pops up that says, we're using Shep to guide and inform you around travel. And then we sign in with SSO. And so it's very kind of seamless and kind of a couple clicks. And then the employee just does their searches as they like. And you can prompt them away from consumer sites like Expedia, tell them, hey, you need to book with Expedia, not with Expedia, with Concur, with your OBT. Or, we also partner with duty of care providers to bring in guidance around COVID, restrictions, vaccination requirements, that sort of thing. So the idea really is the employee just has one place to go and all the information they need is brought straight into that. So yeah, we've got a question here. Is there a way to guide travelers towards a specific airline that's the most, has the lowest emissions? So not today. So our first part, integration with Thrust Carbon, which as I said is very new, just got announced this week. We're focusing at a route level. So the average carbon impact of a specific origin destination is this. The next phase though actually gets deeper. So when you pull up your results, will then pop up a notification that says, fly Delta 789. So it'll basically prompt them to go and find that specific result. And then the final step actually will be highlighting the results. So it's kind of part of the roadmap. We're working on getting from general route guidance all the way down to specific, like guiding you to the right booking. But that's kind of what's going. And we're starting to sort of sign up beta clients for that partnership between the two. So definitely reach out if you're interested in demoing further or learning a bit more. And I think we might actually follow up afterwards. We've got a one-pager that kind of outlines that, has screenshots and talks about that roadmap. So we may follow up with everyone who's here with that just as a link. So if you are interested in learning a bit more about what that proactive prompting to nudge behavior looks like with Shep and Thrust Carbon, you'll have that as well. I think that is all we have. So thank you everyone for attending, and we'll be back next week.